So now we're on the other end of the shop, and the first car that I had pointed out a little earlier, this is also an XK120. This is a 1949 and was actually a race car from new. Not a factory race car, but one that was immediately in the hands of a privateer and very successfully raced in SCCA and was a regional SCCA championship car back in its day in the early 50s. And as every Warrior, it's been retired for a while and is gonna see a new life as a vintage race car when we have the opportunity to bring it back to a more period correct style and hopefully have a way of holding up the hood other than with a broom handle. You keep working your way down here, and now we're back to the mid-60s, late 60s Can-Am era of road racing in the US. And these are now two Lola T70s that you see here. This is a T70 that Dan Gurney drove in '66, a very iconic car. And sitting next to it is a Penske Lola that is also a T70, of course. It was the Penske car that Donahue drove. And this car is very famous and just a wonderful shape. Penske, as you can see, did all of the right things to change the shape and the aero of this car to the best of knowledge of that period of time in the 60s, and did it with an eye towards beauty. So one of the things I always love about these early Can-Am cars is, are they fast compared to a modern day prototype car? No, of course they're not. But what they do is they make wonderful sounds and they look absolutely fantastic. They're all unique, bespoke designs, and you can really feel the DNA of the drivers of them and the engineers and mechanics that maintain them. So these cars speak to us, and we love to drive them, race them, talk about them. This is a factory Porsche RSR, and as you can see, it also leads an active life as a race car and has a few battle scars on it. But these are super fast cars in their day in the 90s, and the owner of this car loves to race it, and if you're at any vintage races around the country, you may well see this car run. Then as we move along, on the left side here, we've got this McLaren M10A. This is a Formula 5000 car. The M10A and the M10B, they were just slight variants with modifications of the same chassis. The chassis was the McLaren F1 chassis of the day. But in the 5000 series, they all ran these 5-liter pushrod V8 motors. So this was about as close to what might be a spec series of its day as there was. And these cars attracted all of the best drivers of the late 60s and 70s. And this is a 69, as I said, so it's an early technology car. We call these flying cigars. They have that cigar shape, and they have the canard wing, you know, the small wing in the front as well as the wing in the back. But these really are very early aero cars. They don't take advantage of all the aerodynamics that you were seeing on any front-running race car, even 2 years after this car was run. And in their day, the M10B won the championship in, if memory serves, in '68 or '69. So these cars were very competitive, and this is a wonderful car for us to vintage race. This, so here's now the category of for something really different. So this is a 51 Merc, and not quite a lead sled. You know, it doesn't have the, it's a 4-door, not a 2-door, and it hasn't really been chopped. But it has an original flathead in it, and it has a lot of the rather classic traditional modifications that you saw in these custom cars. And this thing is just a lot of fun to go out on a cruise with, and we've left it a little bit rough, a little rat rod-ish. It may receive further love as the time permits in the future, but this is something a little bit different from everything else you see in here, but fun nonetheless. This is a Ferrari Dino, I'm sorry, a Fiat Dino. Has a Ferrari motor in it. These cars all came that way. It's the V6 Ferrari motor that you see in the Ferrari Dino as well, but this is the Fiat version, and these came in coupes and in convertibles. and certainly make all the right noises, and is again a great stealthy car that has some unique characteristics with its Ferrari power plant, but yet doesn't really draw much attention. Just seems like an old two-door Italian coupe, but lots of character. And this car, as I tell all my friends, is the car that cured me of trying to do my own restorations. This is a 64 E-type Jaguar, so an XKE. And this was the last car that I personally did my own restoration on, telling my family it would take 2 years in my garage, and turned into an 8-year project. And so that kind of cured me of the desire to do everything hands-on. Now I've got a wonderful team that helps me with 99% of it, but this car sort of has my thoughts and DNA all over it, and I love to drive this car. The E-types are a favorite for me. This car you see here is a 1979 Porsche 930 Turbo, so this is an air-cooled car. Obviously doesn't look very stock. This car was worked on and modified by Roof before it came to the US. And this is a European 930. And also, like a lot of the cars here, has been kind of customized and hot rodded a bit for my tastes over the years. It now has a 3.5, it's the original motor in it, but it's now increased in displacement to 3.5 liters and has the larger turbochargers and intercoolers, produces about 425 to 450 horsepower at the rear wheel, so it's quite a potent car. I raced this car for a number of years. Has 935 suspension under it, and so it's a bit of a cafe racer, as the term used to be, and you can see it looks a little different obviously than a stock car, but has elements of the 934s of that era, and is just a wonderful car to drive as well. This is really one of the cars that got me started in collecting and all of that when I first purchased it back in the late 80s, so I've owned this car for a very long time. A little bit to the left here, you see this Ferrari Daytona. And obviously this is an open car. This is not one of the factory Spiders, but was done by the group here in the US in period that really used all of the Scaglietti methods and parts to create the open top version of the Daytona coupe. And this car is very low mileage and is just a joy to, hopefully we'll start it up later. Sounds great, runs great, and is a really fun vehicle on a nice sunny day. And then you saw when we came into the shop originally, here's another race car. This is a Can Am car, and this is a Heyman SR3. Roy Heyman built 3 Can Am cars in the 60s, and we're going to talk a little more about this car in depth, I think, in a deep dive. All right, thanks everybody for visiting with us here today in Denver at RaceKraft Design, and for sharing our passion for street cars, race cars, everything with wheels, and for riding along with us today.